To look at Washington today and the incredible monument that has been built there to Martin Luther King. President Obama, of course, will be there later today. He will be joined by Martin Luther King's family, as well as two former presidents, to mark the civil rights leader's dream for America. Juan Willaims is a Fox News political analyst. David Webb is host of the David Webb radio show, co-founder of Tea Party 365, and a Fox News contributor. Gentlemen, welcome.
Good morning.
It's good to have you both here. I really enjoyed looking at the pictures and videos from that day and rereading the speech that Martin Luther King gave that day. It is such an incredible speech, incredible moment, the history that surrounded it of Kennedy and the apprehensions that existed as we headed into that march that day. But Juan, you wrote a fantastic piece on this that I want to get to in just a minute. But your big picture thoughts on the president standing in front of that huge statue today.
Well, it's just such an emotional moment, I think, for so many people in the country, especially those of us who are 50 plus, Martha, who can think back to that time and that day, that moment, because it's so emotionally rich for America. You know, it was a moment in which Americans came together. You had a sense of racial unity, black and white, together. Despite all the tensions and turmoils of that time, here you had, I think, a real expression of the Founding Fathers' idea of, you know, all men being created equal, despite all the issues of slavery in the past 100 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. Here comes this civil rights leader, this minister, Martin Luther King Jr., and he gives a talk that touches America in terms of our Christian conscience, our brotherhood. It appealed to the best of America.
You know, obviously, many huge advancements have been made. The most obvious is President Barack Obama. And, of course, you have other leaders on the other side of the political spectrum, David, with Colin Powell and Condoleezza Rice having achieved such high positions in this country. And some people feel that, you know, there should be more sort of conservative representation at this event today, as well as liberal representation at this. And as a conservative talk radio host, what do you think about that, David?
You know, Martha, I focus less on on the representation, who should be there, and what it actually represents. There are figures and icons that are important. Obviously, the most obvious, President Obama, Colin Powell, Condoleezza Rice, high-profile folks with the same color skin, if you will. But what we need to do is look at what we do with this dream. Martin Luther King spoke to the conscience of a nation, and Juan and I have talked about that many times. He talked about the promise in our Declaration, the promises that were held in our Constitution or upheld in our Constitution. What we've done as a nation is take what was a world tragedy and reverse course. And now for all of us, not just for those that have lifted themselves way above with their achievements, but for all of us, we have to take hold of freedom and reconciliation as a nation. Is about recognizing our commonalities, what is important to moving forward in a land of opportunity, what matters when it comes to economic freedom, free enterprise, to buying into the real American dream, which doesn't guarantee an equal outcome, but is based on equal opportunity, and that's something that we should incorporate.
You know, Juan, in your piece, you do a comparison of some of the music of that time that inspired so many people. And when you read through the lyrics of People Get Ready and songs like We Shall Overcome and Bound for Glory and A Change Is Gonna Come, they're such moving tributes to that capture so well the feeling of that time. And you say that you're a little bit disappointed in some of the cultural icons that exist today, like Jay-Z and the like, and the words and the lyrics that they use, and you'd like people to speak out about it.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, in some ways, I hope the president, when he has the opportunity today, doesn't just connect with the emotional power of what happened 50 years ago, but talks about the continuing movement in America. And part of that would be to call out these rappers and their use of the N-word, the fact that they use profanity, that they defame women, you know, and black women right at the top of this, given our high out-of-wedlock birth rate. It degenerates the notion of family and civilization in society, Martha. And I think you have to address these issues if you want to get somewhere. By the way, a moment ago, you asked David about, you know, representation, and I couldn't agree with your point more. I think it's so important. I went to a luncheon this week sponsored by the Republican National Committee, Reince Priebus, here in Washington, And they had people like Bob Brown. He might not be familiar to you or your listeners, but Bob Brown was someone who worked so closely with Dr. King. He is a leading black Republican. And again, the opportunity to say, you know, this crosses political lines, it crosses racial lines, and at this moment crosses generational lines to bring us together as Americans, I think is an important statement. And the music, that, you know, you think of Blowing in the Wind, Change is Gonna Come, you know, People Get Ready. That's stuff that brings Americans, we're all listening, we all
brings
feel
everyone together.
the sweetness of that time.
You're so
there
right, and I
Martha,
advise everybody to take a look at Juan's piece on the WallStreetJournal.com. It's very significant. And David Webb, thank you so much for being here. Gentlemen, we'll see you both soon.
Thank you,
Many thanks.
Martha.
Thank you, Martha.